I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Another Acolyte episode has come and gone, and we're here to talk about it with you. Acolyte Episode 4, Destiny, brought us to a new planet, Kofar, and it mainly takes place almost exclusively there. We get just a little bit on Coruscant, and then it's off to the races on Kofar, continuing the mystery, deepening the mystery. Not a whole lot of answers in this episode, and just a few more questions. The ending is something that everybody's been talking about that we're going to want to get into, and the first time we've really gotten to see a new Sith Lord, what we presume is a Sith Lord, since 2002 with Count Dooku was the last one we got to see on screen. And so it's really, really exciting, and we're excited to dive into this episode today to talk about the Acolyte. And I keep saying we because it's not just me, but also my longtime co-host, the poncho-clad Pantoran himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, man. Oh, gosh, the poncho. I'm loving that we finally got to see this in this episode. I'm really looking forward to talking about this. Again, I've consumed all the media out there that has to do with this, and I've got a lot to talk about, and it's not almost anything to do with a lot of the criticisms here. There's a bunch of Easter eggs. There's a bunch of this and that. Yeah, let's get into it. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I was happy to jump into this episode. You know, if you've listened to our last two podcasts, we've had some grudges with the show. We've had some issues. We've been scrutinizing it. We've been analyzing it, as is our job, as is our duty as Star Wars podcasters, to hold it up to a critical light and have it hold up to analysis and hold up to what came before. And we had some problems, but there's really, there's not very many problems with this episode. There are some criticisms. We'll get into those, but this is the highest note so far for the show, in my opinion, that they've reached. They made it really interesting. Even the last episode, it deepened the relationships and the motivations for this episode. And so I'm really excited to talk about it. I'm really excited to get into it so we can take a look at those relationships through this new lens of the third episode that we already got.
Yeah, and again, I just reiterate, there's a lot to this. This episode moves kind of slow in a sense, but I think this is a common theme on our podcast. I'm so thankful that you listen to this, because on a level, not to brag, but we're really good Star Wars fans and can look into these finer details on these things and really deliver. You can't just sit there and read some top-level criticism. Well, this had this and this character that. There's you got to peel back the layers and really look at what's going on here.
Absolutely. So the episode opens on this really gorgeous shot of Kofar. Again, we already talked about in the second episode, this kind of looks like Mount Fuji, kind of looks like just Japanese rainforest.
And I haven't looked it up. I kind of want to have a discussion first. This looks like Hawaii or something that they're looking around, or maybe, obviously the forest has been added in, but all these trails and big, tall mountains, and it looks like something that could easily be, I don't know. It looks like a fantastic place to live or exile yourself to.
Well, we get to a lot of this later in the episode when we're on Kofar more, but it really reminded me of a lot of those Lord of the Rings shots of them walking around New Zealand. It was a lot like that.
That was in my head. I couldn't spit it out. New Zealand is another candidate for where this could be. It looks like outside of the flora and fauna and some of the other stuff out there, it looks like a fun place to be.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I know that primary filming for the show took place in England, in Wales, and in Portugal. But none of this really looks like it would have taken place there without the extra additions of these forests. But like that walking shot that they have in this episode on the Green Hill, I bet you that took place in either England or Wales.
Okay.
So we are on Kofar, we see these gorgeous shots, and then we get Kelnaka. He's walking into his abode silently, and he gets in there, he's got some of his dinner. This guy is just like Torben. We know that Torben from the second episode was on his Barash vow that he had not spoken to anybody. Kelnaka has also very clearly removed himself from the Order and from the galaxy. They say later in this episode that he's been there for a very long time. And so we do get to see Kelnaka just being an ascetic monk, being alone, and dealing with whatever it is that he's having to deal with that we don't know yet as audience members.
He's upset by something.
Yes, exactly.
It's easy to see.
And so we get into his abode, and you see all kinds of like yin-yang force symbols engraved into the wall. There's just over and over this same, or a variant on the same look of these two force symbols that make up the real-world yin-yang symbol, basically.
And very akin or similar to what the Witch Clan had on their faces.
Yes, exactly. And so you just know that Kelnaka is wrestling with that and dealing with that somehow. So then we cut to the Jedi Temple, and Jeki and other Padawans are being trained by an unknown master. They're going through the lightsaber forms, just like Kanan had Sabine and Ezra go through in the third season of Star Wars Rebels. And so Osha comes up and is watching those Padawans practice. And she's, just through body language, you can kind of tell that she's reminiscing about when she used to do that.
Right. We could do a whole episode. In fact, we should, maybe even a side episode for the patrons or something about, they're not just doing lightsaber training. It's a connection to the Force thing here.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a really big deal. And how this Force is channeled through the user in their lightsaber stances and stuff like that.
Right, absolutely. No, that is worth it. When on the episode that you were gone a couple weeks ago, Cy and I got into lightsaber forms quite a bit on that episode. Because that's something that he knows quite a bit about. That's his forte, is talking about those.
Yeah,
so Jeki and the Padawans are dismissed, and then Osha and Jeki begin to have a conversation. And I'm going to say this right now, one of my criticisms is this scene. They are really familiar with each other. They're acting like they're going to miss each other so much, and they're laughing and joking and yada yada. This is totally unearned. These two have barely interacted with each other on screen at all. And I think that really bothered me, that they were trying to give us this back and forth between these two characters that comes up again later in this episode that is a little too, they're putting the cart before the horse. This relationship has not been established in basically any way for me. So it was really unconvincing for me, their whole conversation.
Well, so a lot of the dialogue and here and after feels kind of clunky, I'm not really a critic on that kind of stuff, but there's just, like you said, they know each other too well in these. They're saying stuff that should be obvious to people already.
Right.
It's hard to say exactly without breaking it down line by line, and we'd be here a little bit too long for that.
Right.
But it's just I don't know. It's just strange. We'll talk a little bit more about it.
Well, you have Jeki's character, who in the first two episodes really seemed to be this kind of straight man, stilted character. Not wooden, like the actress is doing what the director has said to do, but like a robotic character, takes things really literally, takes them very seriously, like a Sheldon Cooper kind of character, basically. And she seems that way in the first two episodes. And she seems that way in the rest of this episode, except in this scene, where she is being really warm with Osha, who is still basically a stranger to her.
Yeah, the second time they met.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was just odd to me. I understand that there is some kind of Padawan connection between the two, since they were both trained by Master Soul. But it's not an earned relationship. But anyway, the meat of their discussion is that Osha's trying to leave now. Now that she knows May is alive, she isn't going to help the Jedi get her or anything. She's just going to leave.
Osha's not a Jedi. She's got a job.
Right. Yeah, she's not being paid to kick it around the temple.
She's got to go find another job. I mean, they're like, yeah, you can have these Jedi cereal bars 3 times a day.
Right, exactly.
Man, I'm used to eating this other food. It was way better than this.
Yeah, going out and partying with her, with her coworkers. Exactly.
Do this.
Exactly. So through the course of the conversation, her and Jeki joke about going to a cantina and swapping stories about Master Soul. I like the dialogue here. It just hasn't been earned. It just, this relationship has not been given to us, the audience, in any way.
Right.
And so they then talk about Master Soul, and Jackie susses out that that Osha's trying to leave without saying goodbye to Master Soul. And that's
just messed up.
Yeah, that is just messed up. So then we cut to May and Chimere landing on Kofar. And so here's a new data point for Chimere as a Sith. So you brought up this theory in the second, in our first podcast about the Acolyte, when we're talking about the second episode of the Acolyte, how this has become a popular theory online. I think this episode builds that up and tears it down just a little bit. I think it's in both directions, but the argument can be made either way. And I think that here we get another data point that he might be the Sith Lord. Because they land, Chimere's immediately talking about how dangerous this planet is, how he knows bounty hunters that won't even enter these forests. And then May's like, but you did it? And for what reason did he do it? And he's like, well, to help you. And how in the world is that convincing?
Yeah. It's kind of hard here. Like, is May just a doofus? Is she just impressionable, Or has he got some influence on her?
I do think May's impressionable. I think that May is stunted on her growth as a person, obviously. I mean, what happened to her on Brindok has limited her potential insofar as not her potential with the Force, obviously, but her potential to trust people or to even be able to suss out when someone's lying to her.
And make sound decisions, which we'll elaborate on when that occurs later in the episode.
So May is very clearly getting tired of Chimere and the entire Enterprise. She is not on any kind of trail that may or may not exist about him being a Sith Lord. She's just exasperated with the guy. Like, he's just talking, and, he's got his entire drunken master bumbling air to him that it would wear on you if you were just a regular person, because he's so carefree. He seems so carefree. But she is very clearly, through her body language, getting tired of this guy. And we're going to just continue to see that grow throughout this episode.
Well, and May's dangerous. She's got, as far as a bad person goes, she's got an extreme accomplishment under her belt. And why is somebody of her status wasting time with a goofball like Chimere? Except for a guide through a forest. But, this seems like almost like typical Sith stuff that you're going to use somebody until they're not useful.
Right. So then Chimere says they start to trek on into the forest, and he says, your sister being alive doesn't change anything. You need to kill the Wookiee. You made a deal. Where is this coming from as far as the Sith code goes, or what anybody who serves the dark side of you? They can renege on any deal they want. The only reason that May wouldn't want to renege on that deal is that the guy might come and kill her, or he will come and kill her. And so Chimere is dedicated to this, and this again is a data point that he knows more than he's letting on, because why would he care in any way?
It feels a little bit like there's, as far as the audience perspective goes, there's some missing data here. Again, I think with all of our knowledge and experience, we can assume what that is. But to the casual viewer who's like, oh man, I want to go watch this new Star Wars show, who doesn't have any idea about Sith history or anything like that, this might be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not saying we should have that. This could be another big reveal at some point in the show. It's like, oh, I was the bad guy all along, haha, but it seems like, I don't know, maybe there's something better that could be done about this, but I can't say what that is either.
Right. No, I understand exactly where you're coming from there, that there's a way for this mystery to be delivered, but until we have all the pieces, we don't know if there is a better way for it to be delivered. But there are multiple ways. So they set off into the forest, and then we get the title card, the Acolyte, and then we cut back to the Jedi Temple. We cut to a group of Jedi inside the temple, watching a feed of May, a recording of May's fighting Master Soul. And so one of these Jedi is a Syrian Jedi who looks a ton like Ki-Adi-Mundi.
And it is. He's credited as
He is credited.
Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Okay, good. Because I thought for sure he was Ki-Adi-Mundi. And so we have Ki-Adi-Mundi, obviously not on the council yet, which is a good nod, Easter egg tied to the prequels that is necessary.
Yeah. Huge discussion about this being in here, about this character being, it's not officially established in canon when Ki-Adi-Mundi was born, but it's not now. He's not this old. And then the biggest thing is like, if he knew about, the biggest point of discussion is if he knew about a potential Sith existing 80, 90 years before The Phantom Menace, then his dialogue in that movie is should be different.
I'm certain that will be solved because
yeah.
that's not even an error. They are aware of that because there were many Jedi they could have picked from on the council. They selected the guy that said the Sith have been extinct for 1,000 years for a reason. So whatever happens in the next couple episodes is going to prove to Ki-Adi-Mundi, as far as he's concerned, that the Sith actually are dead. And that they haven't been around. That these people are pretenders for whatever reason in his mind.
Right. And I've thought a lot about this since last night when I watched the episode. And what you said, I think, will come about. And kind of like the mechanic of it is, and we're going to jump the gun a bit, but Vernestra Rosen here playing the political angle on this.
Yep.
And she's like, we can't tell the council. So the council at this time that the show takes place has no idea that these Avengers, this is all like an off the books Black Ops thing going on. And what is it here? And so Ki-Adi-Mundi's in the mix of this, but whatever's going to be told to him about this operation is that, oh yeah, man, we got it solved. It's not a big deal.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because he's not there. Ki-Adi-Mundi is not part of the squad that heads and goes and finds.
Right. And then the other thing is like, I'm trying to remember, have we been specifically told that this person is a Sith? We
have not. No.
We have been, they even remark in this scene that it's a rogue sect or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what Master Holden says right after that. Soul describes, Ki-Adi-Mundi is sitting there watching the video with everybody else, and then Soul comes and describes that she doesn't know who her master is. May doesn't know who her master is. Ki-Adi-Mundi says that's ridiculous. A person not knowing, a Padawan not knowing their master. Master Holden is the female Jedi that he's speaking with, and she says that she asks, "Is this a splinter order or maybe something worse?"
Right, splinter order.
Through the course of the dialogue there, and so that's something the Jedi would absolutely be familiar with. There's in the Dr. Aphra comic books, they even visit an ancient Jedi splinter cell order, and that's not the first or the last time that's happened with the Jedi, but that would be exceptionally rare for them to try and even get to the level of power that the current Jedi are at. And so this would be very unique. But the maybe something worse is interesting in this. Master Holden character is willing to say more than some other people have already been willing to say. And is willing to say more than Ki-Adi-Mundi is during the Phantom Menace, or other leaders of the Jedi Order are during the Phantom Menace, when confronted with evidence of a Sith Lord by Qui-Gon Jinn, and they're like, that can't be what it is.
Yeah. The point I want to make is that it's so easy for us to want there to be some sort of Sith material out there, and there's so many signs that either this is some sort of Sith doing, and they're going to explain why the Ki-Adi-Mundi's not been told or whatever, or we're just being not in a negative way, but intentionally misled, tricked somehow, and this is some sort of offshooter.
Oh, I'm certain it's a Sith. I'd say I would put actual money on the fact that this is a Sith. We do not know, and you're right, we don't know. But
either way, this is so fun. All these little tidbits of this stuff, this discussion, what we're seeing on here with these characters, so cool.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And again, there's a lot of stuff to be said about this show and all the episodes and stuff, but everything, this tapestry that's being woven in the end, I think if you take a step back and look at from a we're looking at the 1/6, 1/8 of the part of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once you take a look and step back at this whole thing, I think what they've crafted is going to be really nice.
Yeah, no, the bird's eye view, seeing the end, it will be satisfying, definitely. So Soul then begins to talk about May and how she's undisciplined, but Vernestra Rowe cuts him off, saying, she alluded to him being a little bit of a jerk to him about it. And then she says, and she killed 2 Jedi Masters, which, great point. Yeah, whatever of how undisciplined or untrained she is, she's killed 2 Jedi Masters. So Soul then says that she's targeting 3, but is corrected by Rowe that it's 4, because Soul just seems to be in denial that he's a target of her. And this also must connect back to the events of the third
Brindok,
episode.
yeah.
And so there's just a lot that is still left up in the air about what happened on Brindok, and why Soul feels the way he does or is behaving the way he does.
Well, and I think Ro even says, "Why didn't you tell me what happened 16 years ago?"
Yes, she does when they
And
leave
so-
the facility.
Yeah, there's some sort of pact between these 4 Jedi that, you know what happened here happened. We're going to keep it to, and this is an assumption from me. What happened here happened. We're going to keep it to ourselves and not report on this, because Ro had no idea what, like, oh yeah, May's dead. There's no possibility, and I think from there's more to infer, just as we did last episode, that not everything meets the eye was what happened on Brindok.
Well, certainly, but I will say the last episode, from what we can see as a viewer, which is this is intentional, I agree with Soul. There's no way she could have survived that. It's like another bottomless pit.
Well, from Soul's perspective, for sure.
Yes, yeah.
You know, at this point, you got to reassess. I mean, there's even, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit on this episode, May is just as surprised that OSHA is alive, right? She was surprised that we saw in the last episode, or the second episode, right? And what we don't know, this will be revealed later. We have no idea what May's experiences are to think that, you know, obviously she knows she lived, but like from her perspective, did she think OSHA fell into? There's no way OSHA could be alive, you know?
Yes. Yeah, well, I do think, because that's how Soul saves OSHA, is by catching her hand. And so I think May did think that OSHA fell. But we continue through these scenes, because we've skipped a lot. We've skipped a lot that we need to talk about. Rose supposes that that May has been trained by a Jedi, and that's kind of the prevalent theory among them, because they're not willing to assume that there's still Sith out there.
Right.
That the only possible way someone could have been trained to kill a Jedi is by another Jedi. And then Ki-Adi-Mundi says that they have to talk to the High Council, like we've talked about. And Ro says no, that alerting them would inspire fear and mistrust, because the Council is obliged to inform the Senate. And so, again, we see the politics playing too large a role in Jedi decision-making here, which is again, what we're supposed to see. We're supposed to see the slide of the Jedi Order towards this point, towards them considering politics more than they need to be considering it. And this is further laying that groundwork. But again, Vernestra Row's character is just that dialed up to 11. She is, every time she's on screen,
That's her existence in the show.
She's spiteful a little bit, and she is concerned about the perception of the galaxy on the Jedi Order. It's very odd. It's very odd just looking at the book character versus this.
Exactly.
There's been a big change.
Yeah, I mean, she's a very old and wise character, and again, another thing that I wish would exist, and maybe it'll happen in a book, what led her down this path of being so influenced by what the politics are going to be. Mm-hmm. So sensitive and so insecure about that stuff.
Right. Yeah, there has to be in that third book probably something that's going to have to do with that.
This is what the downfall of the Jedi Order is, compromising their values for politics and perception. Mm-hmm. And she's the personification of that in this TV show.
Yes, absolutely. So Master Holden is then assigned by Ro to go recall Kelnaka from Kofar and apprehend May. And Soul is not happy about this at all. They cut to Lee Jung-jae, and his face is just like, what the hell? So then we cut, and Vernestra storms away, and Soul confronts her. This is where she's talking about May's survival, and about how Soul didn't tell her. But Soul, what I think truthfully tells her, is he had no idea she survived. He's like, I would have told you if she had, and she didn't.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the case. That seems to be true, because if you just see the scenes from that third episode, it seems from Soul's perspective, she couldn't have survived. So they then, Soul and Vernestra kind of argue / talk about there being a larger plan here. This is where we get that line, to tip the scales. We've talked about this at length in our preparation for the Acolyte, but basically, this is a spin on multiple lines from the prequels about the balance of the Force being off once Palpatine has risen to power as the Chancellor, before Order 66 even happens, before the Clone War even starts off, about how the Jedi's ability to use the Force has been diminished. There's multiple lines that show us that when the Force is out of balance and when it's tipped towards the dark side, that the light side users are diminished, and that there had to have been a tipping of scales prior because the Jedi are willing to acknowledge that the Force is out of balance by the time of the prequel trilogy. And so these lines, again, are establishing that the events of the Acolyte are what have moved the scales away. And you can even go further to assume that this is balance right now, that the Jedi have a lot of power, the Jedi have a lot of influence within the Force, and that this is what caused the witches so much strife in the first place. And this is what may have caused them to almost go extinct, and that they had to band together with their power of many just to get anything done, because they were not able to tap into the dark side, because the light side was such an oppressive force during that time in galactic history.
Sounds good to me. That's very good points.
So Sol says she won't surrender without getting something. He means himself, obviously. I mean, I don't think that there can be any other. Maybe Osha, but one of those two. Those are the two things that May cares about. She cares about Osha, and at this time, he still thinks she's after trying to kill all four of them.
Right.
So that's where he needs to convince Osha to go with them, because she needs to be there, a little bit like bait. Not actual bait. That's not what Sol would call it, but that's a little bit like what it is.
Well, and Osha's so wrapped up in this, it's a big deal that May is back. Mm-hmm. Really big deal.
So we then cut to Chimere and May walking up the side of the mountain, and he's asking her for a lot of specifics about her quest to kill without a weapon. And so he is quizzing May on what's she going to do. You've already failed twice, really needling her and provoking her, a lot like a Sith Lord May.
I was sitting there thinking, man, I want to know too. I hope she answers that question.
Yeah. And their whole conversation between the two of them leads nowhere. And that's not a problem for me as a viewer, because I think that that's good and intentional, but every time they're talking to each other, neither of them gives each other a straight answer at any point during this episode for all of the questions they ask. And so he's just continuing to needle her about this. She spins around on him and says, why does he work for their master? And Chimere dodges this question, and then he deflects about having seen the master's face. And so this is just, again, one, Chimere could be the Sith Lord, but two, that as the Sith normally do, they have their underlings played against each other the whole time, being suspicious about each other and not trusting each other because they're, not going to be able to band together if they can't trust each other. And so we just get to see that Sith philosophy at work between the two of them here.
Yeah, and it's all these little tidbits that make it so look like it being a Sith and not something else.
Yes, exactly. So Chimere and Osha, or Chimere is speaking to May about Osha, because May didn't actually get to speak to Osha, but Chimere did. So she's asking about it, and he said, she seemed in over her head, which is probably true. And then Osha seemed fond of Sol. And there was a deep look of concern on May's face after saying that. So again, something happened on Brindok from May's perspective that is like, not only are the Jedi bad, but these four specifically are bad.
Sol's not a good guy.
Exactly.
In her IV.
Exactly. And so we're going to get to see that. And there's some lines from Sol later in the episode that kind of shore that up, because they're just confusing. They're just like, as a viewer, we're like, what could he possibly mean from this other than something not good?
Right.
So Sol confronts Osha in the Jedi Temple before she leaves, asks for her help. Osha thinks that he wants her back in the Order. She gets excited and she's like, "You want me to be a Jedi?" And he's like, no. We just need you to come help track down May. And so she's a little dejected and she's like, well, that's not my job. Anyway, she ends up agreeing. And so we get her headed that way. She ends her sentence with, but I won't wear one of those civilian robes. Cut to scene. She's sitting there wearing a civilian robe.
Poncho.
Exactly. A civilian poncho. And then they're receiving a briefing from Yord, just about the situation. There's not really any new information in Yord's dialogue here. But we do meet Basil, this little rodent alien tracker guy, which was pretty cool. He was a neat little character. So the Jedi land on Kofar and they begin asking around and learn that Kelnaka went into the jungle and never came back. And so Sol looks at this jungle and senses him and knows that Kelnaka's still in the forest, for now at least. And they are going to head into the forest to go find them. And then we get Basil set off tracking. He sniffs some Kelnaka robe. And this is where the Lord of the Rings shots come in, where they're just walking through the forest.
So what do you think about Basil?
It's cool. He's
He's
fine.
a cool alien. I like him a lot.
I liked him. He's neat. He was. Yeah. I mean, I get the purpose. Again, sometimes I'm frustrated when we get really hyper-specific Star Wars aliens. It's like they have superpowers, and it's like this. But this one is just, obviously he does this. He's like a little dog
That's his
man.
job. Yeah, he's a different version of Anzillin.
Yeah, exactly. So Osha and Yord are walking together, and there's just a really rocky rapport between the two of them, and it's obviously because Yord takes so much pride in being a Jedi. We've talked a lot about how Yord kind of embodies the arrogance of the Order at the time, but that it doesn't really want to give Osha the time of day because she left the Order, and he perceives this as being a big problem through their interactions. But Osha does trust Yord. They seem to know each other the best of anybody other than Osha and Sol.
He seems like that older kid who was, she was a youngling, and he was, like, she watched him get selected as a Padawan or something like that. And so she's got reverence for him, but they're not that familiar at the same time.
See, I disagree. I think they seem pretty familiar. I think they seem like friends. I would say they were probably in the same youngling class together.
Okay.
This is what I'm getting between the two of them.
He seems older than her somehow.
I mean, he might be a year or two, but I still think that they're essentially the same age group. Like, I think they're peers. If Osha were still in the Order, I think she'd be a knight right alongside Yord. Because the way that they behave with each other, it's not romantic, but it's personal. It's very, I think, when Yord comes, because in the first episode, Yord comes and speaks to her in her room, and she says, "I never thought I'd see you again."
Okay.
And
maybe
so,
I'm just not remembering. That.
She's proud of him for being a knight, and so this is just, I feel like they have a pretty good rapport. But that Yord is a lot more rigid about it than she is, because he judges her for having left the Order.
Two things here with this scene, because we've gotten Yord twice at this point in this episode, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, where's his Padawan from episode 1?
Yeah, that's true. Still nowhere to be found.
Like, this is crazy. That it's not like, did she mess up and get assigned librarian duty or something? Right. And, or she's cleaning the routines or something, whatever. So, I mean, slight discrepancy there. And, there's a lot online said about the actor. I don't care about that. I think the way that he's portraying this Jedi character is really cool. He seems like he's somewhat Anakin-esque, not in the way that he's adhering to this Jedi stuff, because that's not what Anakin did, but he's this broad-shouldered, tall guy with a unique haircut and a devil-may-care attitude in some sense.
Yeah, full of himself, like Anakin was.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. But he's so one-dimensional. He's always just butthead, being a thorn in Osha's side or something. He's just not doing. He's this. I don't know. I wish there's more to him.
So I haven't heard about the criticisms surrounding the actor. I don't know anything what you're referencing but
it's a stupid. He said Anakin blew up the Death Star. Yeah, and it's just
What?
It was just a Freudian
That's
slip.
okay.
Yeah.
That is.
He's getting ripped online by all the bomb throwers. It's stupid.
It's okay for an actor in Star Wars to not be that familiar. You listen to a Liam Neeson interview, he doesn't even, or Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Come on, these guys don't even like Star Wars.
For the bomb thrower, the history started the day that this episode was aired.
Right? Exactly. Like, cut the guy a break. I didn't know that. The way you said that, I thought there was something way more to the story. That being the mistake.
Again, it depends on your perspective.
Sure.
It's like,
it's not good. I'm not going to defend the fact that he can't answer that question, but
it's a purity test that's unfair. But yeah, actors are actors. They're just normal people when you get right down to it, and they're not all Star Wars fans. They're there to do a job.
Exactly.
And we care about them doing a good job. And I'm sorry, I don't know the actor's name off the top of my head. The Yord character, the actor doing that, is doing a fantastic job, I think.
Yeah, I think he's been following the direction that he's been given, and like you said, they're doing a job for money. They don't have to have seen Star Wars. It's a pretty high bar, or to be a massive Star Wars fan. It's not a high bar to have said see Star Wars. It's a pretty high bar to be like, you have to be a Star Wars fan to be in Star Wars. Then you're going to lose a lot of high caliber actors.
If you made some sort of requirement that, okay, to be acting in Star Wars, you have to be Sam Witwer level of intelligence. Okay, we got 5 people who could do this show.
Yes,
Thanks.
exactly. And doesn't even mean they're the best actor for the job.
If you need a bad actor, you could come hire me. I'll do it.
Yeah, if you want just Star Wars fans, we're here. But if you need an actor, you've got to find an actor. And so, yeah, I think that's unfair. But to continue with the Acolyte, rundown, Osha and Yord are having a discussion, and this is where I agree with your criticism that he's been pretty one-dimensional up into this point. This is where I think he gains a little bit more dimension, is in this scene. Because Osha and Yord are talking, and Osha comes to him and says, don't hesitate to kill May. She doesn't say that exactly, that's paraphrasing, but Yord pushes back on this because he says, Soul is a really wise master. If he thinks she can be saved, then she can be. And Osha continues, you can't hesitate. I already hesitated. If May is a problem, she needs to be dealt with, and she needs Yord to do it. So she trusts Yord the most of everybody to do, in her eyes, what needs to be done. He doesn't commit, but he seems to understand. And then he tells her, this journey is for her to heal. The reason she's here is to face her past and to overcome her burdens that she has between herself and May. And that this mission is not really to apprehend May. It is to apprehend May, but there's always a deeper meaning. And the deeper meaning here for Osha is that she needs to confront her past. And Yord is being pretty wise here by trying to communicate that to her, because we then hear Soul layer the same thing on later.
Right.
So they continue walking through the forest. We get to these trees that have these giant roly-poly-olies on them.
Oh, man, I saw this, and I even said out loud, I'm like, Orbalisk! They're way too big for that. And Orbalisk is an animal out of the Bane books. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. And it's hopefully inspired by Orbalisk. Like, if I could ask Leslie Hedden the question, I'd be like, please tell me that's what this is, because they look really cool.
Yeah, they do look cool. I really liked these. This was a Star Wars creature, and that's something this show has not had a problem with, is giving us good creatures. This was a problem with Ahsoka, where you've just got, random animal that is supposed to be some Star Wars creature, and it's not. Or
the Bad Batch.
For the Bad Batch. Or for everything I love about Andor, just giving us actual sheep with a horn glued on top of its head. They spent all the budget on everything else being perfect, that their creatures were crap. But the creatures here was really, really good. And so Osha touches it, one of these, rock-like growths.
Why? That's about dumb. Those
and
things
gross.
are so big.
I was like, I don't want to touch that.
If that thing got pissed off at you, it would bite your arm off.
Yes.
You'd just be gone.
Yep. And so then it takes off back behind us. It scuttles up the tree when she turns her back. And then it's flying around, and Osha notices first, and it's just this creature kind of screeching. All the Jedi notice, and it's getting ready to attack. The captions call this an Umbra Moth.
Yeah, very cool.
And so Soul ignites its lightsaber, and it immediately charges for the lightsaber. He cuts it in half, and then you get everybody. I thought this was really funny, because it was necessary foreshadowing, but there's like 3 people in the background that are mumbling like, it's attracted to light. Oh, it came right for the lightsaber. Yeah. Like, it's just like in the background, just like we as the audience need to know that it's attracted to light, but there's no good way to get that through in interpersonal dialogue, so they just get some random Jedi in the background going, be like, did you see it go for the light?
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that was funny. Soul kills it, obviously, because it dives itself into his lightsaber. It's like a bug to a bug zapper. I mean, it is a bug, and that is a bug zapper. So the Jedi continue walking through the forest, and Osha and Jecki are having a conversation, and Osha's upset that she basically got that Umbra Moth killed, which she did, because she disturbed it, it woke up, and now it's dead. And that's all true. And Osha says further to Jecki, and this is where Jecki and Osha are being more personal again, and I feel like the scene from the beginning was to set this scene up, and both of them are unearned. Like, they went too fast, they went too quickly, because they said, oh, they're best friends. Here's a best friend conversation. And it's like, could you not have given us, in that first scene, them getting closer, and then this scene being what cements them as good friends?
Right. A moment of adversity.
Exactly. Cart before the horse a little bit here. Yeah. So they're having a conversation, and Osha says she could never accept death as a good Jedi should. And Jecki continues to just be exceptionally wise for her age and station in the Order, where she is talking about, it's not about the struggles that you faced, or it's not about what you've lost, it's about the struggles you've faced, and you've gone through a lot of struggles and a lot of adversity. And Jecki says it's an honor to see anything become a part of the Force, but then she qualifies that by saying she hasn't seen near as much death as OSHA has, because that could be just flat out offensive to somebody like OSHA when you say something like that. Really?
Sure.
How many of your family have you seen burned to death? So
Put an asterisk on that burn to death.
yeah, sure, okay. Who have been killed ostensibly. So we then cut to Kymir, and he's in a hurry. He is rushing May along, trying to get to Kelnaka's domain, abode, house. I don't know what to call this thing, because it looks like a crashed spaceship, and it has a hyperdrive, but all we see is the door the whole time.
Yeah.
So anyways, Kymir's hurrying him along, and May just insists on resting. Kymir doesn't like this, but he doesn't do anything about it. And then they start to have a conversation where May is saying, this isn't a test. This is impossible. How do you confront someone? If a Jedi won't fight an unarmed person, then how on earth are you supposed to defeat
Especially
one without a
Wookiee
weapon?
Jedi.
Yeah,
Goodness
well, the Wookiee
gracious.
is the most impossible one. She had her best shot with Torben, I think. And so she's just defeated. She's just like, this is impossible. I can't do it. And Kymir tries to motivate her, tells her she's losing her nerve and that she can't do that. And then he goes off to get water. And leaves May alone to kind of contemplate something in the forest. She hears a little bit of a sound, and then she pulls a rope out of her bag. And then it cuts to the Jedi. So the Jedi have lost Basil, their little tracker guy. There's nowhere to be found. They found the little muskrat man. And so they're just walking around in circles. Then they hear May screaming for help. And they all take off towards that direction. But Kymir hears it. He gets there first, and as he's running to the rescue, is caught in a Return of the Jedi trap. I mean, he's just running through the forest, and boom, now you're in a trap. He was always thinking, he wasn't thinking with his stomach, but he was thinking with, I don't know. Couldn't think of a good one.
Trying to find May.
Trying to find May. And so this is the only asterisk of unless he intentionally got caught in that trap, this is where you say, well, how force sensitive is this guy? How much of a Sith Lord is this guy to actually get caught in that trap?
He would, and so I've thought a lot about this too. He'd have to be so wise and powerful that he can just sense these things. Mm-hmm.
Which this is a piece of rope. It's not, all living things have a presence in the Force. Well, rope doesn't.
Well, but if Saul can detect Kelnaka in there, right, then a Sith Lord could too. He can sense.
Oh yeah,
things,
certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about a person who's already scouted this area and knows how dangerous it is, probably at night and otherwise. Walking through a forest like that isn't something you do casually. Mm-hmm. We, as we sit now, would have a really hard time doing that. And so this is a very adept person, this potential Sith Lord. And so we're talking about another requisite with the Sith is, if he's sitting here, if this is a person who's manipulating, this master manipulator of May, and he's seeing his plans unravel with the way she's talking up to this point, then there's something coming to a head here, and he's got to do something about it. If this guy's capable of this much sensitivity, falling into this trap I feel this, it feels like a dumb justification, like really.
This is I say it every episode.
But this is what it's gotta
This is
be,
a
right?
Darth
If he's-
Jar Jar style. This is,
yeah.
you look at all the dumb things Jar Jar does, and you're like, well, they're all intentional. And it's like, that's a fun theory. And I still actually do believe Kymir is probably the Sith Lord. That is leading theory.
Well-
I'm bought in on that.
well-
but I think this scene totally takes away from that.
Yeah, no, I agree. But this is one of those Occam's razor situations. He's carrying this helmet-sized backpack, right? He could be wearing these reversible robes that are brown on the outside, black on the inside.
Right.
And I'm not saying that this is right. I kind of want to be wrong. I want this guy to be like some secret badass or something, But all the height proportions are there. We don't know of any other actor who hasn't been revealed up to this point. I thought about it from that angle, right? When he lifts his hand, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. When he lifts his hand at the end, it looks the same as Kymir's, whatever.
No, again, I do think it's him. I'm just saying that getting him trapped like that is just kind of like, again, he intentionally knew to be trapped. That's just a little
it's
weird.
slapsticky and silly for what this show's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's if he ends up being the Sith Lord, then you have to come back to that scene and say, oh, well, it was his plan all along to get trapped in that. And it's like, why? That's stupid.
Well, and the point I was building to kind of is this. it's an on-the-fly level of thinking and adaptation that is, you get what's that bell curve chart? On one end, it's this genius level master manipulation that you can sense these micro things in the future that you can
You're talking about
detect
the
where a
bell
trap
curve
is.
meme,
Yeah.
the IQ bell curve
Yeah,
meme? Yeah. Okay.
Or it's this, it's some other version of it where you got a genius on both ends of like, I'm so adept that I can unintentionally fall into a trap, but make the best of it and not be revealed. I mean, like, seriously, we're jumping the gun a tad, and I don't want to, I know you're going to talk about this, but May turns on him at this point. If you're going to turn on somebody, you go, in my mind, I'm like, you go all the way through. Rifle through this dude's pockets. You need supplies to get out of this place. Take his backpack, take his stuff.
Well, that would be, I don't think that's, so May, her turn here, so yes, so May's the one who trapped him. It's revealed immediately after. And she's breaking the deal with her master because Osha's alive. She says, hey, I don't have to work for this guy. You're wrong. This deal is totally reneged on because my sister's alive. And all of this was based on her being dead. And so that is May moving even slightly, but moving regardless towards the light. So so Kamir has been helpful to her. She says after that, I couldn't have done this without you, meaning gotten into the forest this deep. So she does feel like she owes Kamir enough, I think, not to rifle through his pockets and kill the guy.
I guess that's a
I
good
think
point.
her point is, or I think that her level of compassion goes so far as I won't kill you, but that's what I think she's having a little bit of compassion on the guy.
Yeah, and she remarks that she's going to go turn herself into Kelnaka and the Jedi. And she says, the guy, Kamir's like, well, he's going to kill you. Well, not when I tell the Jedi about everything.
Right. Yeah. Chimere convinces her, he says the Jedi's going to put her in jail. And then she says, not when I tell him all I know. And then he says, well, he's going to kill you. And she says, well, he's going to have to find me. And I don't think even he can make it through here without a guide.
Yeah.
And so we know that to be false.
Well, and this is another thing. You can kind of see Kamir's demeanor change when he says those words. Well, he'll kill you. And it's like, I mean, gosh, when you're a Sith, this isn't the first time especially if you're some master manipulator, this isn't the first time that you've tricked somebody into goofiness stuff. Like being held upside down to trick somebody. I don't know. That's such a stretch to say out loud.
Sure. So we continue. We're on the Jedi. Sol pauses, and he is disturbed by something dark he senses. Probably Kelnaka's murder. This is probably when Kelnaka got killed.
So this is the turn of the episode. This is the climax, and it's Lee Jung-jae sells this so well, and May is right there along with it, sensing the same things. They've been building up to this, that with the animals, like we said a minute ago.
Right.
And I think she marked, I felt connected. I'm jumping the gun again. They have a little conversation right here. I feel connected like I never have before.
Yeah. Oh, well, you got to qualify who says this. Osha says she feels different.
Yeah.
And she's speaking with Sol. Exactly. She says she's feeling a deeper connection with her connection with the Force is reawakening slightly. And this also likely has to do with May having a little bit of a turning point herself. There's the connection between the twins there, as well as all of the external factors.
And literally in this episode, they're getting closer and closer and closer to one another. That physically, that we only saw in episode 2, and May was actively running away. This one, they are intentionally, they're not aware of it, but they're intentionally coming closer and closer to one another.
Right. And so this scene right here is where we get the weird lines from Sol that make you scratch your head, and I really don't have a great answer for them. And I don't know if, other than something happened on Brendok that we don't know about, which everybody knows. The average casual people can pick that up. And so Sol says that they both will face their past here. And once May is safely on board, he will explain everything. And so could this potential Sith Lord be from their past? We don't know. And what's the shared connection there? But are they facing their past by facing May? There's just a lot open from Sol's statement right here. And his, we're both going to face our past. He, again, is reinforcing the fact that something happened on Brendok that he feels like needs to be atoned for.
Right. And I think there was a line earlier in this episode, about why Osha left the Jedi Order, and she's like, well, I just couldn't get over the past, right? And there was something with, what was the other Padawan Jedi? Jackie. And she had some wisdom about that. But, you can easily see here that, we know from episode 3 and all of this stuff with the other 3 Jedi that everything's not on the up and up of what happened to Brendock. And I think subconsciously Osha knows that too.
Sure. I think that's why she left. A good assumption.
And this line from Master Soul confirms it.
Right.
He's going to confess to May what actually happened there.
Yeah, he will. Because, again, May has this bad feeling earlier when Chimera says that Osha had an affinity for Soul. Like, something happened with Soul specifically. All 4 of them, but Soul is the one who's going to be paying the price, because he's the only one left at this point. Yep. So we cut to May as she arrives at Kelnaka's home. She runs towards it, she trips, and she confronts Basil, who just is screeching at the top of his lungs in his language that he's found May. To us, it just sounds like a dead animal caught in a trap. Yep. But Yord goes, oh, he found May, because earlier we didn't talk about this. Yord studied this guy's language, studied Basil's language.
Shiriwook like everybody else.
Yeah, got his nose in the air, Shiriwook. And so, anyways, Basil's screaming. May takes off and enters Kelnaka's home to find him dead in his chair with a fresh lightsaber wound in his chest.
Right.
And again, I think this happens when Soul stops, just a little bit before that. He pauses, can sense something. It's probably the death of Kelnaka there. So she realizes that he, the ostensible Sith Lord is here, and then the sun sets, casting the home in darkness completely.
Yeah, very cool little scene. That transition there's just top notch.
Good tone shift, because the whole episode they've been 3 hours to nighttime, 10 minutes to nighttime. It's getting dark, and so this was really good just to set that up. So she then senses, the presence of some darkness, and the Jedi call out into Kelnaka's home, and then they say, come out, and then Yord adds in, that means you, May Anasea, telling her to get out there, put her hands up, she's under arrest. But then Osha turns around, and because she senses something as well, just like everybody else, her force sensitivity is now heightened. Just got my new force sensitivity back. I can't wait to sense things. First thing you sense is this utter darkness.
Yeah. In a lot of other things, and I'm thinking about Rise of the Red Blade when Iskatakaris sees Darth Vader. It's just like a giant man-shaped black hole in as far as her force perception was. And I can't really remark on how that was, but as far as like how it was depicted in the episode, but we can assume that it was something similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a lot about how people have different presences in the Force and sense the Force differently. There is a good line from some comic book where it talks about the difference between Palpatine and Vader's presences. And they say Vader feels like this hot, fiery inferno, so dangerous, yada yada, and Palpatine is just this black, like frozen ocean. Like it's just everything around is just cold and lifeless and dead. And so it makes you wonder, how does this guy feel? Or what does this guy feel like?
Yep.
So then Soul turns around because he can sense it now. And then we see Kylo Grin descend from the treetops. No, nothing. That wasn't funny. Kylo Grin.
You said that joke before.
I haven't said that.
Yes,
no, I have not. Absolutely not. Listeners, call in and let us know if I've said Kylo Grin before. Because I've said a different one. This one, though, was an original. This one was new. Anyway, he comes down from the treetops slowly, levitating. Kind of reminded me, there's a lot of Lord of the Rings callbacks to this episode for me, which I'm not like a massive Lord of the Rings fan. I've seen them like twice. But and maybe I'm thinking of Harry Potter, but whatever. The giant spider, because there's 2 giant spiders, and there's one in both of them. Anyway, when they creep down slowly from their web, it's like the same musical cue for this guy, which was good, and it was a good, creepy thing. But anyway, he slowly levitates down and then walks up to Osha. Jackie quietly says, "What is that?" to all the Jedi. And as a Padawan, she doesn't know, obviously, and she's the most immediate to say, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to ask people who know more than me. Nobody there has any idea what this guy is. Right. That is a complete mystery to everybody. No one answers her for obvious reasons, and it's clear. So the Sith Lord who laughs comes face to face with Osha and ignites his red blade right beside her. And then he just force pushes her to the side, which is curious. He doesn't want to kill her. There's a reason he doesn't want to kill her.
I thought she was dead right there. Until she jumped off to the side or was pushed off to the side, I thought she got the saber to the chest move.
Yeah, I did too. I was like, oh, Amanda Stenberg now only plays May. That's exactly what I thought was going to happen.
So she's important.
Yes, there's a reason he kept her alive.
She and May are important.
Yes.
Their mission is important, what they're trying to accomplish.
Their connection to each other is likely important.
Merc and Jedi.
Right, exactly. So then, as soon as he ignites that red blade, all the Jedi ignite their blades. They know that this is a problem.
Scene.
They charge at him, and he force pushes all of them backwards with this big blast. It's hued in red, and then it's a hard cut to black as the Jedi are shoved into the screen.
One of the Jedi flies into the screen. Very cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. So it was a good episode. Again, I think this is probably the strongest episode so far of the series.
Yeah, there's one major disappointment for me. We didn't get to see some Wookiee Jedi Kel Naka action.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I kind of glossed over the fact that Kel Naka's dead because as a character, we have basically no information on him. But there's a whole group of people out there that are like impassioned Wookiee Jedi lovers. Honestly, I'm not a huge Wookiee Jedi guy. They're all right. Like they're no cooler.
Come on.
They're no cooler or less cool than any other random alien Jedi.
Wooden sabers, man.
The wooden saber's cool. Anyone can have a wooden saber. Anyways, the fact that we didn't see him on screen at all is really crazy. And if you are one of those diehard Wookiee Jedi fans, gotta be upset.
Well, they're tears
because he was hyped up before this episode, man. People, and I'm not gonna say he was hyped up by Lucasfilm, just some stock photos. But fans put a lot into we're gonna see a Wookiee Jedi.
If there's any theory that's true, you're gonna see him in a negative light of him massacring the Brendok witches.
Right.
That's not gonna be good.
Yeah, exactly.
From a lot of perspectives.
Yep. So that's the episode. That's the meat of the episode. Again, like I said, I was pretty pleased with this episode. There were fewer criticisms of this one than I've had of any of them so far. Yeah.
Again, I think I said it earlier. It was the plot moved really, really slow into this one, and I told Carter before this that it cut to black. I'm like, come on, I want to watch what happens next. And I've seen a lot of pushback online. If this were... So, I was thinking about how to discuss this otherwise, and I'm from I watched live on TV one of the greatest cliffhangers of all time, and that was the end of Star Trek's The Next Generation Season 3, where Picard was assimilated by the Borg, and it was Locutus of Borg at that point. Cards look at me like I'm like, what? But
I haven't gotten to that far yet.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, spoiler, but gosh, it's getting to be a 30-some-odd-year-old spoiler.
Oh, I'm not worried about spoilers. I haven't seen that episode yet. I'm not near as big a Trekkie as.
But my point is when that occurred, we had like a year or something before we got a resolution. I'm very glad we only have to wait 7 days for this one, or less at this point. But it seems to me nowadays, in the era of the bingeable TV show, people hate cliffhangers.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, it's just a matter of what the streaming service chooses. Netflix, they release them all at once, and then you have people talk about your show for a total of 5 days.
Yeah,
and then,
Amazon did it too at the Fallout show. So
yeah,
or maybe I waited. I don't remember.
No, the Fallout show all came out at once too.
I waited. I didn't watch it when it came out. I watched it after.
But that one did kind of come and go. The Fallout show was really good. I'm happy there's a second season, but nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the virtue of that is you get a huge flash in the pan if you're going to drop them all at once.
Yep. Need a water cooler talk for sure.
Exactly. So that's the end of the Acolyte. That's the end of that episode. But now we're going to head on into our Always in Motion segment to discuss what we think is going to happen next.
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
So true, Master Yoda. Always in motion is the future, especially on this show. When we did the Always in Motion segment the last time or the time before last, no way were we going to guess a whole flashback episode show.
Yeah, I really thought it was going to be interspersed.
Yeah, and so now we've got to guess what happens next, which probably a little easier. Unless, imagine you were just complaining about cliffhangers. They hit us with the next flashback episode, like a steel chair in the wrestling ring. You're ready to see the Sith do his work, and instead you get another flashback scene to Brindog.
So that would be an egregious faux pas to the extreme. This happened. South Park did this back in the late 90s. You're supposed to find out who Cartman's dad was. And so, like, they hyped it up insane, and it was a Terrence and Phillip episode. You know, again, you're looking at me like I'm stupid.
I don't know what that means.
Because
Yeah.
none of those words mean anything to you. But if they did that, oh my gosh.
Well, the thing I think we can rest easy, and this is a prediction, is that the next Brindog flashback cannot be a full episode long, because it's just going to be rehashing too much. Like, there's a lot of stuff that isn't up for debate on how it happened in that episode. So it won't be a whole episode. It will be Soul relaying to Osha and May the flashback.
So some inside baseball on this. The director of this next episode is the same director of the current episode 4. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be, they're going to have the same director direct all the same stuff.
Right.
The same director that directed episode 3 is directing episode 7. There's got to be another flashback because Soul has to confess what happened, right? That's part of the completion of May and Osha's characters,
right?
So, again, same director. Episode 7 will be a flashback episode to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and also, super bold prediction that we've already mentioned. The next episode will be named Night.
Yeah.
That's going to be the title.
Super bold. You're way out on the limb there, man. Need that 1 in 36 chance on the blackjack or on the craps table there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Night obviously takes place at night. Very dark for the Jedi, literally and figuratively. Mm-hmm. But we saw some very ham-fisted telegraphing here with the bugs, the Umbra Moss, right?
Yeah.
Attracted to the Jedi. That's going to be the savior of what these Jedi are. Obviously, a bunch of red shirts are going to get hacked to pieces.
Yeah, every non-named Jedi and probably a named Jedi will get killed.
Yeah. Hopefully, some missing limbs here and there.
Yeah,
You know, for some named ones.
I mean, look, you know, Soul, Jekki, and Yord are the 3 candidates of actual characters on the ground, and Basil, which that one's going to be super interesting. What happens to that guy?
Yeah, Basil, he wasn't anywhere to be found. For all we know, he's the Sith Lord.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there always 2 there are. He's this guy's master.
All right. And then I don't think it'll happen in this episode, but I read a comment online, and I was going to text it to you, and I wanted to see what, but I had to look you in the eye when I make this quote unquote prediction. So there's a lot of talk about from this last episode about the witches and how May and Osha were brought about. And it was floated the idea that Shmi Skywalker is a descendant of these witches.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I did hear a better theory than that. And again, I went on such a diatribe on our last episode about how I'm not a big fan of the Palpatine created Anakin, you know, through manipulation of the midichlorians storyline, but this lends a lot of credence to that, just by the witches having done May and Osha. But what if the Sith had set up the witches in the first place to create May and Osha?
Yeah.
And it was like an experiment, basically. You have the 2 of them that are so divided, the light and the dark within each of them, and May is so dark and Osha is so light. And then, you know, this was the first iteration of that. And then Anakin was the closer to perfect copy.
Well, and so this is what makes this whole thing such a fun discussion. And I think what ultimately is going to be, you know, we don't know the motivation of it all got truncated by the events in episode 3. You know, was it simple reproduction and evolution of their order of witches that they want to do stuff, or was there some other goal of creating May and Osha? Right, we don't know that. Hopefully, it'll be answered one way or another. But one thing that you can, I think it's obvious as anything else, as the nose on your face is that if you're trying to create something, you know, we spend a lot of time in the Bad Batch and a lot of comic books and this and that, where Palpatine's trying to make these, what was the term? Not cloning, but strandcasts and this and that. And so it's always this imperfect. You get these Snoke-like things or this Palpatine version that has to exist in this mechanical apparatus. And it seems to me that the lesson Palpatine should have learned is that if you want to create something like this, you can't have the dark without the light. And obviously Palpatine's never, him being look at the light is toxic to him.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's never going to occur to him to even do that. And so, and that's kind of what the Force diet at the end of the thing is he needs the light of Rey to either continue on or end his existence. And what happened. We know how that ended.
Yeah, no, I think that's really wise. I think that's absolutely true. And so, like I said, I don't like the theory that Palpatine... In fact, I loathe the theory that Palpatine created Anakin. But if that's the direction they're going in, then this adds a lot to that as a longer-term Sith experiment to do that, and as a longer-term Sith plan to do that. But that'll be sussed out later. As far as more predictions go for these episodes, I mean, we've said there's going to be this big conflict. Soul's going to spill his guts about the situation. We're going to have revealed who the Sith Lord is. Maybe not in the next episode, but I think before the end. I don't think that'll be a final episode thing. I think that'll come a little sooner.
Yeah. The Sith have a continuation all the way up through Palpatine, right? So, I mean, we're not going to end with the death on these characters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah.
Not the important ones.
They will
Maybe
absolutely
Soul,
live on. Yeah, exactly.
But,
I do think Yord is going to bite the dust, especially after he and Osha's conversation. I think that Yord is the one who's going to come most likely to being killed.
Yeah.
I feel like Jecki may be the only survivor.
Well, I mean, they've already set up another telegraph in this. They've already set up that none of this ever gets back to the council.
Right.
And Ki-Adi-Mundi thinks that, I mean, he was put here intentionally. They're not going to slap some random Saurian in there. And then, I mean, he was credited as Ki-Adi-Mundi. So he ends up on the council with no knowledge that this person is a Sith.
Well, with opposite knowledge.
Yeah.
With knowledge is for him to be so confident as to say they're extinct.
And so, And so that's what a lot of the online criticism centers around is like, they don't know Star Wars. Come on, man.
Yeah, they're so
they're setting this
disingenuous.
up. I mean, the whole thing, all the previews, the first lines from the previews was, don't believe your eyes. And Ki-Adi-Mundi is the personification of this.
Yes,
In this show and in the other, and in everything else.
He's always the foil for that. He's always... So, yeah, there's a lot of criticisms that can be lobbed at this show that are valid. To say that they didn't watch The Phantom Menace before they made this show is just ridiculous.
That's a stretch in the extreme.
And so, that's our Always in Motion segment. Do you have any more predictions? You got any more? Okay.
No, gosh, what's going to happen to Basil? I think he lives.
Yeah, I think he might be forgotten about. Lost thread would be my guess.
He could be snatched up by one of the Umbermoths, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, well, that would be
easy
way
pickings
funnier.
for that.
Yeah, definitely, he is. That would be way funnier and way sadder.
Well, they're throwing these slapsticky scenes.
Yeah.
There,
well,
so.
where is Basil? And he's just screaming in the air. We lost him again.
Poor Basil.
All right. Well, that wraps up the Always in Motion segment. We got a lot more to talk about, though. So we're going to head on over to How the Force Works.
That's not how the Force works.
All right, Colin, so we're here on How the Force Works, our Patreon-powered segment, where Patreon subscribers of every tier are able to go to patreon.com/Star Wars Station, submit a question to be asked here live on the show. So today's question comes from our Patreon subscriber, Loaf, and he asks, what Star Wars creature would you adopt as a pet?
I love this question. I don't read these questions until I get here. Carter always has them prepared. I like to be put on the spot like this because it makes it feel fresh. I don't have a prepared answer. So as usual, but I like to dissect these questions too. Are we talking about all of my pets I've ever had have been I live out in the country. People unfortunately abandoned pets on my property on an unhealthy basis. And I'm able to rehome a lot of these things, but I keep some of them for myself. My current pet, a dog that I have, Dixie dog, is she's a terrier mix. So are we talking about like that, where you're going to adopt from a shelter as a pet, or do we going to be like the Tiger King style?
You can have any creature that you feel capable of keeping as a pet. If you think that you have the facilities to keep a Rancor satisfied, then you can have a Rancor.
Well, then you stole my thunder. Mine's a Rancor because it
Okay,
would just be
okay.
off the hook cool to, you have this thing. Everybody know you're the Rancor guy.
You're the Rancor guy. Everyone's terrified to go into your living room.
Yeah,
They
well,
aren't going to
worse
stand in
than
front of
that,
you if
yeah.
you're sitting in an armchair because you might
Yeah.
be pressing a button.
Exactly. but more than that, when the 4th of July parade comes around, I'm going to be strolling down the street in my Rancor.
Yeah, riding it just like Boba Fett, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nothing as far as the Star Wars pets go. I haven't seen some sort of like flying crate dragon thing that that's like the Targaryens from Game of Thrones or something like that. But
Sure.
that's kind of a stretch.
The mighty Mythosaur from Mandalore.
Yeah,
That could be it.
I'm going to just stroll up, be a Mandalorian, tame this underwater beast, and we're going to get after it. Like, that's a stretch, I would say. Even a Rancor is kind of a stretch, right? Because are they from Dathomir? I know they're on there. In the
Yeah,
video
they're
game.
native in Dathomir. In the
Yeah.
old video game, maybe that's not canon anymore.
Yeah,
but
I don't know, but like, think of the extremes to have to go to find one of these things. You'd have to be like some sort of Hagrid-esque, like, oh, I got an egg and da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And hatching in the fire or something like that. And I'm its mom, and that's why it's not eating me. What was the character's name who was in the expanded book that had all the extra stories and stuff?
I do not know what you're referring to.
He was the pet handler for Jabba.
Oh, Jabba the Hutt's Beastmaster. Yeah, gosh, that guy's name that's the book you're referring to is the Fakpov
Yeah, there you go.
for Return of the Jedi. And
He
they
had a
gave
story
him
in
his
there.
own story
Very
that was
cool story. My main point is that in the Star Wars universe, with the vastness that it is,
Malakili. Malakili is his name.
these Beastmasters, I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen, but maybe they're a nickel a dozen,
Sure.
And so if you have
A nickel a dozen, that means they're less rare, right?
I don't
They're-
know. I'm bad at math. A quarter a dozen?
A quarter a dozen. Because if it's nickel a dozen, you're getting
that
more
whole-
for less.
This is that whole 1/3, 1/4, which one's bigger?
Sure.
You're melting my brain here, man. But yeah, a Beastmaster isn't going to be hard to come by, is my point.
Right.
And so I don't know if I have the facilities personally to do that, but if the possibility of owning a Rancor that I could ride around town existed, I would pursue that.
Sure, yeah, you'd find the facilities. You'd
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah.
Mine is a lot less hostile or aggressive. I know I could take care of mine.
Yeah, think what the liability insurance on a Rancor is.
I would just want Morai. Or, if I can't have literally Morai, I would just like a Convor. Just have that bird that follows me around all the time. I'm in a different dimension. Somehow it's there too. Totally fine with just having this dimension-hopping bird friend around. So I can't think of, I thought of an Acolyte, but then that's kind of the same problem as the Rancor, but even less tameable. A Nexu in the expanded universe, Han Solo's granddaughter gets a baby Nexu as a pet in one of
That's awesome.
one of the 9-book series that they do, and it's pretty cool. And so that Nexu, it's like crazy vicious though. Obviously, it's like real world people who get ocelots as pets. Like a house cat wasn't good enough for you. You need a wild animal.
Yeah.
And-
Go ahead.
No,
so I guess an honorable mention, and if we're talking about going to extremes, is a Sarlacc. Is that it's a living thing?
Yep,
We're talking about owning Rancors and stuff. I'd like to have a Sarlacc hand in hand.
But that's the thing. I think you can bond with the Sarlacc. There's a reasonable enough that the Sarlacc's not going to eat you because you bond with it. You can't bond, or the Rancor's not going to eat you because you can bond with it. You can't bond with a Sarlacc.
I don't know. And the Fakpov, C-3PO could talk to it.
You're not C-3PO.
You could, if I can own a Rancor, I can own a C-3PO.
Okay.
or maybe a Jedi will gift him to me.
Sure.
Of course, I'm not going to get very far after that. But
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of really good Star Wars creatures out there, obviously, and so there's a lot of good pet answers. So we appreciate the question, Loaf. And if you want to ask us a question on here, all you have to do is head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station and ask us a question. We've got a couple news stories to get into now, and a few of them are pretty neat. And so we are going to head right on into the HoloNet news segment.
You made the HoloNet.
All right, Colin, so we've got 3 news stories for the HoloNet news today. The first one is about an upcoming Lego set that's pretty interesting. So a couple times Star Wars Lego has made sets from video games that weren't canon. Like they released a Darth Revan figure, or they had the ship from the Force Unleashed video games made. Sometimes Lego goes and makes just random sets that are not in Star Wars. Like there's this set from the early 2000s called the TIE Crawler, which is a tank with a TIE fighter bubble in the middle. Cool. And that thing never existed. But it looks cool in the Lego set. But this one is intentionally made as a what-if Lego set based off of the Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy TV show coming in September. And it is the Dark Millennium Falcon. And it includes a bunch of crazy bent characters. It's got Beach Luke, whatever that is. It's got Darth Ray. It's got Bounty Hunter C-3PO.
He reminds me of Zaphod Beeblebrox from Hitchhiker's Guide.
I've only seen that once, so I can't remember that specifically. I just know the dolphins with the fish singing is what I remember.
He's just got like a IDGF attitude.
I gotcha. Oh, so he's like the dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, that's what Luke looks like in this to me.
Yeah, that is what he looks like. But the minifigure I'm the most excited about from this set that I think I'm going to buy this set just for this minifigure because honestly, straight up being 100% transparent, I think this minifigure will be worth $1 billion in 10 years. And that is light side Darth Vader, Jedi Darth Vader.
We pulled this up and discussed it briefly before this segment, and I'm like, man, I don't want this thing. I already have like 3 Millennium Falcons. Mm-hmm. Why do I want this? Oh, yeah. I'm going to spend $400 for a minifigure, and it's worth every penny.
It will be, because the minifigure itself is going to be worth way more than that someday.
The next thing I want to know is the canon behind Jedi Vader being in the self-contained suit thing.
Yeah, well, there's a we've talked at length that if they were to ever make a Star Wars alternate universe show, that they need to not call it What If, because that is a Marvel thing, and they need to call it Infinities.
Yep.
And in the original Infinities comic book for Return of the Jedi, Vader does turn to the light side and just paints his armor white.
Well, this one's only $179.99. That's actually
that's pretty standard cost for the Falcon sets. That was the Rise of Skywalker Falcon set price tag.
Yeah.
So I think I think it's probably based off that. They probably just took the exact same kit, just got all black bricks.
Changed the pieces, and made some cool minifigs. Yep. This one will be purchased and set in the box.
Yes.
Probably until my kids want to roll me on the dung heap and take care of it.
Sure. Maybe until your kids need to go to college, and then you can just sell it, and then there you go.
That'll pay for 2 semesters right there.
Yep, exactly. All right, so the next story is Star Wars adjacent. This is not Lucasfilm, this is not Star Wars, but it is important to Star Wars fans. And that is Spaceballs is reportedly going to have a sequel in the works at Amazon MGM Studios. And Mel Brooks is attached to the production, which when I first read this headline, I immediately got outraged before I read that Mel Brooks was attached to it, because anything like Spaceballs or any other Mel Brooks production made without him would not be worth seeing.
Right. I think it's a miracle that Mel Brooks is still alive. That's crazy. But I think
that's why I thought he was dead. So that's before I read that part, I was like, they can't do that.
And I wonder what his role is actually going to be besides, hey, read this script. Yep, looks good to me. Have a great day.
Yeah, that's exactly
have fun making this thing.
Executive producer in name only.
Yeah. This strikes me as one of those things like if they ever tried to remake the Back to the Future movies.
Yep.
That would be a horrifying turn of events. And I don't know if I'd say this is exactly the same way, but like John Candy's long passed away. There's a lot of jokes in this that have to do with racial identities that can't be done.
Can't be made. Not today. Absolutely not.
And I don't know this primary. Well, Bill, no, not Bill Paxton. Bill something, I think, is his name. He's still around. He was the president in Independence Day. You know, part of what makes a lot of this stuff so successful is how they're interconnected. And I don't see the interconnectedness here. You can't make the same jokes today that a lot of what this movie centers around.
Mel Brooks' entire style is just not acceptable anymore. As far as people, like, people aren't going to go shell that out. Studios aren't going to make it. And so that's what I have a lot of trepidation about this too.
And then, I mean, those are just kind of bullet points, I think, from the whole thing. Like, Josh Gad, I like the guy. He plays Olaf, but his brand of stuff is just not something I'd go out and buy. And it seems to me like this is all that stuff envelops into, like, this is just not a good idea.
I agree. I'm not thrilled, but this is worth reporting. And I will say that I think there's a niche to be struck for them. And this is pretty counter to what most Star Wars fans are going to want to hear. But if they take the track that so many people have been, because this isn't produced by Lucasfilm, this isn't produced by Disney. So if they take the track of all of the criticisms that people have had of Star Wars since Disney's purchased it, and of the sequels, and if they spoof that kind of stuff, it may be halfway successful, because people will, if the jokes are worth it, people
Kinda
will
like
like
a counterculture to those movies.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I think, because that wasn't, the original Spaceballs was a spoof of Star Wars, but Star Wars was uber successful. It wasn't saying this movie is stupid. It was just Mel Brooks's space opera that was going to be funny.
Yeah.
But if they just spoofed more Star Wars, it likely won't. But if they wrap up the criticisms of the sequels, the criticisms of the prequels, and roll them together into a product, then I think they could be halfway successful.
Yeah. I don't see Josh Gad doing that.
Probably not. I don't see it happening either. But that's the only way I think that this could make any money. I definitely see this being a flop. Like, yeah. This isn't the kind of, sequels to Mel Brooks movies are not the kinds of things that make headlines or get people to go watch things. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of people who like Mel Brooks stuff, but most people who like it are like us, who recognize it's a one-off. Like, it needs to be done, and then it shouldn't have a sequel, because there's no point to having a sequel.
Right.
I will be looking forward to seeing Yogurt on screen again, though. One of my favorite parts of Spaceballs. So
he's 97 years old.
Yogurt is?
No, Mel Brooks.
I know. Wait, well, didn't Mel Brooks played Yogurt?
I think so.
So Yogurt is 97.
997. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yogurt. That's hilarious.
So our last news story is about Bryce Dallas Howard. You know, she's been super involved with Star Wars for a number of years, and she recently talked about directing Skeleton Crew. And she's talked about how she would really like to direct a Star Wars movie one day. And I'm super open to something like that. I love when Bryce Dallas Howard directs stuff. She's been great for The Mandalorian.
Yeah, in Mandalorian Season 3, I remarked that was one of my, I want to say it's my favorite episode, but it was one of my more highly regarded episodes. It seems like that episode, it was the one with the droids. I likened it a lot of Asimov stories.
Yeah, you really liked it, and it was my least favorite. But her other stuff I really liked also.
My point is that she has some insightfulness that, compared to some of the other directors that have been floated as directors of Star Wars movies, gives me a lot of trepidation.
Yeah, I think she's great. She's got that connection to Star Wars through her family. She's been involved in the studio a long time. Fans really like her, and I'd really like to see her do something. We did her director draft quite a few episodes back, and she was on my list for the director draft. She was one that I would have given a movie to.
That's a good idea.
So that wraps up the HoloNet news segment. That's the news for this week surrounding Star Wars, and we've got one more segment to go. We're going to now head on over to the Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, so what is your Star Wars moment of the week?
Man, mine's pretty good. Between last episode and this one, it was Father's Day, and Star Wars has a lot of fathers and parent-centric themes into it. I think everything has something to do with parents or familiar relationships like that. And mine was no less fun. It was my children gave me the Star Wars Oreos that are real cool. I've seen a bunch of ads for them, and I was very lucky. I thought I got the Sith Oreos that I wanted. I didn't think I don't. My wife purchases these things. I don't go to the store buy Oreos, but my kids got them for me, so I get to enjoy these things.
Nice.
And they're red on the inside. I thought they would be like, oh, well, they just repackaged the Christmas ones. You know, they got a unique cookie with the character on them.
Right. Yeah. The cookie mold's different characters.
Right. But the icing on the inside it's red on the outside and white on the inside and has like sugar crystals in it. They're really good.
Cool.
In addition to that, I also got some Grogu shaped goldfish crackers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I love those crackers. They're really good.
Yeah, I love goldfish. They're super good. That was like my go-to snack when I was little.
They're amazing.
So, that's a great Star Wars moment of the week. Mine is super similar, like food related completely. Also in the grocery store, right next to our Star Wars Oreos is the coffee section, and the Bones Coffee Company has some new Star Wars coffee flavors. They've got like a dark side mocha, some rebellion flavor, and then Wookiee cookies, which we got, and we really like coffee at our house, so we brewed it up, and it is very good. It is very tasty.
Does it taste like a cookie?
Yeah, it tastes like a cookie. Yeah. I mean, it's coffee with a cookie, but yeah. It tastes like a chocolate chip cookie.
That's
so
awesome.
It was really good. Yeah. So I was happy to have those, happy to eat those, or happy to drink that, and it was cool. It's always cool to see those Star Wars tie-ins.
It tastes like a hairy cookie, did it?
Oh no, I couldn't find any hair in it. But anyways, that was just really cool. It's always fun to find that Star Wars food. So that wraps up the podcast today. That wraps up the podcast for this week. We love talking Acolyte episode 4 with you guys. Lots of stuff to think about over the next week. Who's the Sith Lord? What's going to happen in the next episode? What's Soul have to say? There's just a lot to speculate about. And so we hope you guys are going to spend this week thinking about it, coming ready next week to listen to our commentary once again on Star Wars The Acolyte. We appreciate you guys listening, and if you've listened this far, you're probably a fan of the show, so please head on over to Spotify, Apple, leave us a 5-star review, leave us a 5-star rating, go over to YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscription, click that bell button for the notifications. What else do those YouTubers say? Leave a comment.
Leave a comment, subscribe. I want to say pop on a Discord and join me and the rest of the people who think that Basil is the Sith Lord.
Yeah, exactly. Go promote the Basil Sith Lord theory in the Discord. Promote it in the Facebook group Star Wars Station Cantina. You can also find us on Facebook, and you can find us on Instagram at starwars.station. You can find us at Twitter at SW_station, and you can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/stationmedia, which is about to be very active between Star Wars and Warhammer and everything else that we're working on. That is a place to be to follow us.
Right, lots of stuff. I don't have enough time in the day. They came for Warhammer. Stuff is changing all the time. We're getting the stream going for that, and then they put a DLC out for their Doom style video game. And I wish I could find the time to play that on there, but sure. I just don't have the time.
Right. We've done a little bit of Star Wars Hunters foray. We might do that on Twitch sometime. I just started it, so I'm gonna keep trying to play that one. And we hope that you guys will continue to follow us, continue to be along for the ride, and continue to stay wizard.